Previously on OVERMALLED.
What's the most powerful word in advertising? New. The problem with new is that new gets old, and when it does, you need another new thing, until eventually you end up. Welcome back. As always, I'm your cruise director, Kristen, and this is episode 2 of OVERMALLED. In the last episode, we talked about the first 6 malls in Cincinnati and their current state. In this episode, we're going to explore 6 more built between 1971 and 1980, starting with Northgate Mall. Built on land formerly occupied by the Mount Healthy Airport, Northgate Mall opened in phases between May and September of 1972. It was originally anchored by Sears, McAlpin's, and Pogues, who began their expansion into the Cincinnati suburbs with their Tri-County and Kenwood stores a decade earlier. By 1983, through a series of mergers, Pogues had become LS heirs to later become JCPenney. Northgate was the largest mall in Cincinnati when it was built at 800,000 square feet. In 1992, the mall was remodeled and an additional 200,000 square feet of retail space was added, along with a food court, parking garage, and a 4th anchor in the form of Lazarus. Today, the mall is still standing, but with no traditional anchor stores. After the exit of Dillard's in 2009, their former space was redesigned into several large big box retailers that included Michaels, DSW Shoes, Marshalls, and Ulta, 2 of which opened into the mall. In late 2019, the already struggling mall was dealt 2 blows in the form of Macy's announced closure and a well-publicized incident that was alternatively referred to as a brawl or flash mob, in which over 100 teenagers stormed the mall, causing it to be evacuated. I want to point out that similar incidents with teens have occurred at malls that still continue to thrive, most notably Kenwood Town Center and the Mall St. Matthews in Louisville. But the empty corridors suggest that the well-publicized closures and unrest may be enough to do this place in, so stay tuned. When I began researching malls in Cincinnati, I had completely forgotten that Casa Square, which opened in 1974, was once an enclosed 350,000 square foot mall. Built immediately across Kemper Road from the very successful Tri-County Mall, it was originally intended to be a sort of value-oriented counteroffer to Tri-County's lavish department stores. Hey, 2 malls across the street from each other worked in Kenwood, why not here? Casa Square was originally anchored by Service Merchandise and Gold Circle, along with 20 inline tenants, a movie theater, and a discotheque. As we know now, Service Merchandise and Gold Circle no longer exist. With the closure of Gold Circle, Casa Square's location was converted to Hills, which lasted until 1992 when it was replaced by HQ, a large-scale lumberyard and hardware store similar to Home Depot, and the beginning of the end was nigh for Casanelli's lifespan as an enclosed mall, especially following Tri-County's expansion the same year. The center reopened as an open-air strip mall in 1994. Over the years, Casa Square has unfortunately played host to a conga line of retailers that are now defunct, such as Just for Feet, Linens and Things, and most recently Toys R Us, and there are a lot of empty spaces, mirroring that of its enclosed neighbor across the road. This Home Liquidator's place, though, is new, so maybe there's hope for it yet. In 1976, Sears' Homart Mall Development Division decided to go south of the border to Kentucky to build their next project, so let's head down to Florence Mall, y'all. Construction began in 1974 on the Tri-State's first two-level mall anchored by LS Ayres, Pogues, JCPenney, and Sears, who, as I mentioned earlier, were actually the developers of the mall. It unseated Northgate as the largest in the metro area at nearly 1 million square feet. The water tower, as you can see here, was originally intended to advertise the mall from its vantage point overlooking I-71 and I-75. Due to legal concerns about advertising private business on public infrastructure, the water tower was repainted to read Florence, y'all, because it would only cost 1/3 of what fully repainting it would. And it has stayed the same since 1976. It's a bit of a local icon, and the minor league baseball team is even named the Florence Y'alls. Florence Mall is squarely in the number 2 spot behind Kenwood Town Center as the best performing mall in the area, and it's interesting both malls are owned by the same firm, Brookfield. Being on the edge of the metro area helps too. If you head south from here, the next enclosed mall you'll hit is in Lexington, Kentucky, nearly an hour away. And at the time it was built, the next closest mall heading north would have been Beachmont, which is about 30 minutes. It hasn't been without its struggles though. In 2018, the mall that Sears built lost its Sears in November. There haven't been any announcements regarding its successor in the empty anchor space, but the interior remains about as well occupied as a mall could be in 2020. Across town at the same time, a new neighborhood mall is being built next to a GM plant in Norwood, Ohio, and its life as an enclosed mall is all but forgotten. Surry Squares' interior was designed to resemble an old-fashioned outdoor street complete with cobblestones and cast-iron streetlights, and was home to about 20 retailers. It was anchored by a Thriftway grocery store and Central Hardware. It advertised heavily that it was available for events and performances and was a bit of a community hub. In 1994, the former Central Hardware was converted into a shiny new media play. The interior access was closed off in the early 2000s after many years of deteriorating occupancy. Cincinnati's first modern lifestyle center, Rookwood Commons, opened only 3 miles away in 2000, so that definitely didn't help. It was fully demalled in 2009 with the unveiling of the expanded Kroger. I don't know that I think the changes here were all bad. It's very possible the neighborhood didn't need an enclosed mall, and this strip center seems to be doing just fine. It is, however, more evidence that we were building more than we needed even in the mid-1970s. Interstate 275 that circles the Cincinnati Metro was completed in 1979, paving the way for more shopping areas to pop up all over the city. In 1980, out in what used to be Fields, came Eastgate Mall. I had a really hard time finding photos of this place from its opening, which in a way may be evidence that the opening of a mall was no longer news. It was just business as usual by this point. Eastgate Mall was the first entry into the Cincinnati market by the firm Jacobs, Visconsi & Jacobs, who had already dominated Cleveland and Columbus with their developments. When it opened, Eastgate was anchored by Sears and JCPenney. In 1992, it added a wing to accommodate McAlpin's, and in 1994, Kohl's was added as the fourth anchor. In 2001, CBL acquired the Jacobs portfolio and attempted to position Eastgate for success by doing an extensive expansion and remodel to add a food court and brighten up the interior by exchanging the brown terrazzo and bricks for this brightly colored Mills Light design they describe as a spring meadow. I grew up going to this mall and worked here for a few years in high school, at this Sears actually, among others, and the nostalgia in me has never really cared for this look, especially since parts of the mall are carpeted. But Eastgate has managed to hang on and may be able to survive, especially since, in a similar way to Florence, it's the last mall if you're heading east until you get to Ashland, Kentucky, 2.5 hours away. They were in fact home to the last Sears to fall in the Cincinnati area, which closed in December 2019. This last corridor is still mostly closed to its main tenants being a mini golf course and a discovery zone. That's right, discovery zone, which aren't allowed to reopen due to the pandemic. Most weekends before this, it was pretty lively, and I hope they will be again soon. While Eastgate Mall was opening on the east side, in 1980 McAlpin's was cooking up a plan to open their own mall, only 2 exits away from Florence Mall in northern Kentucky on a plot of land the department store had owned since the 60s. Crestview Hills Mall struggled from the beginning. It was built with 2 anchor spaces, one for McAlpin's and another they planned to fill later. They never filled it, nor did they ever fill over half the inline spaces. This was, with apologies to Forest Fair's Cincinnati's original dead mall. I remember going here as a kid a few times and marveling at the amazing amphitheater-style fountain I desperately wanted to climb into, which is probably why malls have less fountains now. It was nice looking, just empty. In later years, McAlpin's would expand into the other anchor, using it as a furniture gallery, but the mall remained mostly unoccupied. They closed the doors in 2003 with plans to demolish the dead-on-arrival mall. It was replaced by Crestview Hills Town Center, an open-air shopping and dining complex anchored by Dillard's, the department store that McAlpin's had become. It has done exceptionally well because, unlike the dated dead mall it replaced, it was new, and it was Northern Kentucky's first development of its kind. For this kind of place, it's very nice and has a lot of upscale mall staples like Sephora. Crestview Hills Mall was the mall that never should have been, but Crestview Hills Town Center has turned out to be the social hub that the mall wanted to be from the beginning. In 1980, the west end of downtown Cincinnati was home to a mostly forgotten mall in a very unforgettable building. Originally a train station built in 1931, Union Terminal is home to the largest half-dome structure in the Western Hemisphere. By the 1970s, train travel had fallen out of fashion and Union Terminal sat neglected and in danger of demolition. The original train concourse was demolished in 1972, but the grand marble and stone building sat vacant and neglected when it was purchased by the city in 1975. They began advertising that they would offer a lease of $1 per year for 15 years with the option to purchase for $1 million after the lease term to anyone who could come up with a novel use for the building. Enter Stephen Skilkin, a 28-year-old developer from Columbus who envisioned turning the terminal into a mall called the Land of Oz. On August 11, 1980, the mall opened to great fanfare that the building had been saved. Everyone came to see Loehmann's, a New York fashion closeout retailer, FAO Schwartz, Doubleday bookstore, and a 12-stall international food court. It was also home to a nightclub called VIP and a French restaurant called Les Palmières. People came to see it, but with no traditional department stores or really very many stores that would be regular repeat visits, along with the recession of the early 1980s, the mall stalled. By 1984, only Loehmann's remained and the mall shuttered for good in 1985. The good news is that Union Terminal's lost mall years probably kept it from being torn down, which would have been a travesty as it's an architectural wonder. It lives on today as the Cincinnati Museum Center, home to 4 museums and an OmniMax theater. It recently underwent a 2-year, $228 million renovation to restore the building, and when it reopens, I plan to give you a look inside this amazing structure. It has resoundingly served the public better as a museum than as a mall, but we can be thankful for the stay of execution the Land of Oz provided so that we can have a museum to enjoy today. Thank you for watching with us, and next time we will delve further into even more malls when we cover 1981 to the present in the series finale of OVERMALLED. A very special thank you to Phil, Eva, and the rest of our ever-growing list of patrons for their support of our channel. If you like what you see, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to be notified of new videos, including the next episode. Until then, we are Unicom Productions, and we'll see you next time.